Hi, my name is Javier Paliero and this is 7-Minute Futures, a short-form podcast where I ask thought leaders around the world for the future of technology and its impacts. What does cable TV and early internet regulation have to do with the social media landscape that we have today? My guest of the day offers great insights about this and the potential for emerging technologies to make things better. Daphne Keller is the Director of Platform Regulation at Stanford Law School Program in Law, Science and Technology. So let's go to my first question. Looking 3 to 5 years down the road, what is the single most overlooked issue at the intersection of technology and human rights that will soon become impossible to ignore?
There are probably a lot of those, but I'm going to pick one that seems relatively hopeful, which is the issue of middleware or interoperability, meaning tools that users can deploy to choose their own settings for social media and determine what content they do and don't want to see, or what ranking they do and don't want to experience. Tools that could be provided by a competitive market of third parties that are offering alternatives to what big companies like YouTube or Instagram offer today. Those are tools that are interesting to free expression lawyers because they are an alternative to legal proposals we see often, which boil down to having the government set the rules for speech. And the beauty of middleware proposals is that they move power to individual users and they don't put the government in the role of setting speech rules. There's a pretty, I think, wonderful passage about this in a 2000 Supreme Court case about cable television in the US called Playboy. The court said, quote, "Technology expands the capacity to choose, and it denies the potential of this revolution if we assume the government is best positioned to make those choices for us," unquote. Now, middleware is a hard issue as a matter of law and policy for a lot of reasons. It sits at the intersection of competition and speech and also privacy. And so to sort through how it can be done, you have to bring together a bunch of different fields of expertise that can be too often siloed. But what I think is great and encouraging about it, speaking as a lawyer, is that the biggest hurdles to making it possible are really technical issues and questions about business model and revenue. They're the kinds of hurdles that other people who are smarter than lawyers can figure out how to solve. There is so much more interest in this coming from the business world, coming from the world of policy and government, coming from technologists. We are seeing technologies, most importantly, blue sky, that are being built from the ground up to make this kind of user choice possible. So I believe and hope that this is one of the major changes that we will see 3 or 5 years down the road.
And here's my second question. If you had the power to implement one hard reset, a radical change to a policy, a piece of technology, or a social norm to better protect digital rights, what would it be and why?
I'll give you an answer that is a less important thing that I know a lot about, and an answer that is a more important thing that I know less about. So the thing I know a lot about, and that I think was a real missed opportunity, was the Section 230 immunity in the United States, specifically for non-consensual sexual images, also known as revenge porn. In the 2010s, there was increasing awareness of just what a horrific experience it is for people who are the victims of this. And there was a lot of outcry for platforms to take that stuff down, which is quite understandable as a matter of morality or policy. On the other hand, if you were a platform, as web search was, that sought to just do what the law required and to leave speech up if it was legal, there wasn't a legal basis to take it down. And I think that if Congress at the time had passed a federal law regulating quote unquote revenge porn and specifically establishing a federal criminal claim, that would have done two important things. First, it would have created a cause of action against the bad actors who are actually creating and spreading this stuff. But secondly, because federal criminal claims stand outside of the immunity of Section 230 for platforms, it would have created a legal reason for platforms to take this content down and to have a formal definition that is shared and that was democratically enacted and that could be vetted against constitutional problems by courts, instead of leaving the situation where private companies were being asked to step in and use their own moral judgment to override what lawmaking bodies had decided. The second thing, which is far less my area of expertise, but is more consequential, was the shift in federal communications doctrine that allowed very partisan talk radio, including the U.S. far-right talk radio host Rush Limbaugh, to become very popular. A lot of media historians look at this as a turning point that led to the extremely commercialized polarization that we see in the media space and increasingly in the social media space today.
A deep contradiction sits at the heart of how we try to govern the internet. We impose centralized, top-down control on a system designed for decentralized communication. That one-size-fits-all approach often doesn't consider the harms that communities had already foreseen and abandons the principles of openness and resilience that drove the internet's growth. Our guests' examples highlight the price of this flawed strategy. A lack of long-term vision from lawmakers for the protection of rights creates power vacuums that some actors exploit. Platforms become judges of speech, sometimes reluctantly and lately in a more willing manner. Middleware presents a different path, one that aligns with the internet's native architecture. Instead of empowering governments or platforms, middleware empowers us. This vision faces real challenges, though. Dominant platforms and governments may resist any loss of control. Questions around intellectual property, data security, and compliance must be solved. No single solution is perfect, but the principles of a decentralized, user-driven internet offer a far more hopeful foundation for our digital future than the centralized control we have today. These are just my initial reflections, but what do you think about this? The conversation continues on my Substack at javierpaliero.substack.com. See you in the next episode.